There was 2-3 games in Cherry and Jimla. Cherry must have so.
Yo, what are you looking for? Dude, I can't find my girlfriend. Oh, Cal. Hey, can I borrow you real quick? Here, just stand right here. Okay. And then just put your head against my shoulder.
Like this?
Yep.
Hey!
There's that.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. Sorry, I was struggling to get this thing started. But anyways, we are here now. So like I've mentioned I'm not sure if I mentioned it to all class reps, but just to share the information, unfortunately, I've been struggling with my LMS. It's been giving me errors the whole time. So regarding the second test, you will not be writing it. Can I just ask everyone to mute themselves, please?
Okay.
Anyways, so yeah, I'll still open it for you just so that you can look at the questions. So when I don't have issues regarding LMS, I'll still open it for you just for fun, not fun so that you can see what type of questions were in the test. So for now, hopefully I'll finish by tonight. I will upload or continue to upload the CA1, 2, and 3. So now the first test that you wrote will be your CA3, and then your presentation will count as a separate CA for presentation, and then the hard copy that you handed in the lesson plan, that would be your CA2. Yeah. So those will be that will be your 3 CAs then. So for now, you are sorted with all 3 CAs. The only thing that we are left with is just to cover the final chapter. It's not a lot of work really. So for today, we'll continue with balancing. Okay, so we'll do balancing and gymnastics. Then we are left with, I think, locomotor movements and then games in limited spaces. So for those, I will open additional sessions. So those of you that want to join can join, but I will be opening it for recording purposes. So I will record the lesson on those topics, like probably like 2 or 3 lessons. And then I'll also upload it onto LMS for you all to go view it. All right. And like I said last time, I'll try and do that also maybe not tonight, but hopefully by end of tomorrow. I'll also create a folder on LMS where I will just put all the slides in that folder so that you don't get confused. I'll put all the slides in that one folder, and then you will use that content to study for the examinations. All right. Okay. So balancing is one of the important topics that we usually use a lot, especially for youngsters obviously, when we do balancing activities, it pretty much influences the way that we control our body, the movements we make, literally the way that we move. I mean, even the way that we walk, being able to jump, that involves balancing, and then literally just keeping the body upright. So when we speak about balancing, what pretty much happens in the body is, in order to balance, we need to be able to, the muscles need to work against each other in order to keep the body upright, or to keep positions in a steady state. Okay, so Webster defined it as stability produced by even distribution of weight on each side of the vertical axis and an aesthetically pleasing integration of elements. All right, so what they talk about when they talk about vertical axis, that's actually a part that's also covered in the course outline. So a vertical axis would be from the toes to the head. All right, so whatever's happening on your right side of the body and the left side of the body. So our muscles pull on each other in order to keep that vertical axis. Okay, so then they say elementary children experiences two types of balancing challenges. So similar to what we spoke about when we spoke about what was it, flexibility, we had static flexibility or static stretching, and we had dynamic stretching. So when we talk about static balance, this pretty much means there's little or no movement. So literally just standing upright or balancing on one foot and trying to hold that position, that would be regarded as static balance. It's very important that you know the types of balancing, similar to the types of stretches that we also did. And then dynamic balance, obviously, this is balancing while we are moving. So literally walking forward, walking on a line, bouncing on one leg, hopping on one leg or one foot, would be regarded as a dynamic balance. All right, so like I said, static balancing is maintaining a desired shape in a stationary position. Examples they give here is doing a handstand or a headstand. Dynamic is maintaining an imbalanced position while moving. Okay, the examples they gave there is weight transference, so activities like jumping, even throwing, or then traveling in any way, like walking, balancing on a line, on a beam, would be regarded as dynamic balance. There's one person's microphone. Is it Lauren? Lauren, you are the culprit. All right, I've muted you. Okay. So when we are teaching balance, there are certain experiences that we need to consideration. And the first one is it's easier to balance over a wide base of support than a narrow base. All right. So literally walking in a lane of 3 meters wide, right? Compared to walking over a beam, right? So the base is either wide or it's narrow. Okay, so this has to do all with progression. So when you are doing balancing activities, it's always good to start off with a wider base of support, and then decreasing that base of support as you progress through your lessons or your activities. And then another consideration is the center of gravity should be aligned over the base of support for stationary balance. And then counterbalance requires extensions to one side of the body beyond the base of support with extensions in the opposite direction. All right, so what is the base of support? So the base of support could be the object that you are walking over or trying to cross, but at the same time, the base can also be, or not can be, is always also our feet, right? So the support, the base of support in this, in regard to walking or standing up straight, our base would be our feet. All right, and then the rest of the body becomes a lever. I hope that makes sense. So let me give an example. So for instance, if we use the floor as a main base, right? When we stand on that specific floor, if we stand on 2 feet, we are standing on a wide base. If we try and widen our base, we can even try and widen our stance. So that means we will separate our feet even wider apart. So you can go shoulder width or you can go further than that. So the wider the base becomes, obviously then the more balance you have. All right. But now if you think about the base decreasing, so bringing your feet closer together, then you are decreasing the base of support, which makes balancing a bit more challenging. All right, if we even go past that point whereby we lift 1 foot off the floor, then we are even decreasing the base much more. All right, then balancing becomes more difficult. All right, but the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the reason for this is to always structure your classes or your lessons whereby you, especially for young learners, where you start off with a large base. So the activities would require them to move over or stand on large bases. And then from there, you progress by making the activity a bit more challenging by decreasing the base. All right. Then here you'll see they give just different levels of tasks. So the first one is the pre-control level. Children usually achieve balance coincidentally, a focus on exploration of weight bearing and stillness, such as use of different body parts as bases of support and stopping in balanced position. Please don't forget the basis of support does not always have to be the feet. It can be if a child is standing on their hands or trying to balance on the hands in a handstand or balancing on the head, then the hands would become the base of support, or the head and the hands would become the base of support. Okay, and then the next level is, so sorry, before I continue, in the pre-control level, it's when they talk about coincidentally, it means it's usually this type of balance comes naturally. So children usually learn this level of balance through exploration, through play, so self-exploration, self-play, as they experience the environment and they experience new movements, etc., etc. All right, and then the control level tasks, where children can demonstrate holding stationary supports for several seconds. All right, so this is where you make it a bit more challenging for them, where they need to hold certain positions, whether it's balancing on one leg and then maybe trying to move the torso forward, or balancing on more narrow bases of support. So maybe you had blocks that you used in your first lesson where they need to jump on or walk over. The next time you can use balance beams or anything whereby you decrease the base. So making it a bit more narrower would increase their balance. Okay, and then balancing in inverted positions on apparatuses. So also balancing in inverted positions would mean where the base is not horizontal. So the base could be skewed a bit. So it could be lifted on one side and then on the floor on the other side, where they need to walk upwards or walk up and down on whatever it might, on what do you call those things? These playground slides, even a skewed balance beam, anything in that way could be a progression, and it's usually you would do it in the control level. All right, and then we have utilization level tasks, which focuses on static balances on variety of equipment and various bases of support, balancing in dynamics, so where you start balancing on narrow supports or narrow bases while moving. So a good example of this would be when you start doing gymnastics, for instance. If you work on the balance beam, you need to do a lot of things on a balance beam. You need to walk over it, run over it, You need to make cartwheels, front flips, back flips, etc., etc. Okay, so this is a more advanced level of teaching balancing activities. All right, so it includes in combining balancing with locomotor and then the transfer of weights. And then developing sequences of movement on both floor and on an apparatus. All right, so on the floor, as an easy activity, you can probably make them do tumbling activities like rolling forward, rolling backwards, doing cartwheels. And then for progression is getting them to do it on a narrower base. Okay, just quickly with the weight transfer, remember what we said. Once your feet is on the floor, right? Maybe let's give an example. If your floor is shoulder width apart, that is enough balance. All right, that's going to give you a strong base of support. But if you start moving from left to the right side while you're standing still, so the upper body you pretty much bend laterally, maybe to your right side or your left side. What you are doing is you are moving the weight on top of the base. So that makes it a bit more difficult to balance. All right. So if your hips is not directly over your feet, it means there is a weight that is outside of the base of support. So that can make balancing a bit more difficult. Those are also other ways you can look at progressing balancing as an activity. Okay, so usually what do you do when you are moving your hips to, let's say, to the right side? So when you do that when you do that naturally, your upper torso, your upper body, your head and the upper body would move to the left. So if you move your your hips to the right, your upper body is going to move to the left. So what that's doing is basically it's compensating for the weight distribution. So the weight that's moving outside of the base. So then it makes up for it by moving the upper body to the left side so that the upper body can be over the base. I hope that makes sense. All right. If you want to go test this, very simple. Go stand on 2 feet, put your feet together, you stand up straight on the floor. All right. If you lean to the right side, you'll see you'll start falling as soon as your upper body and your hips moves past the base, your feet. Then you're going to fall over. All right. So what we naturally do is when we start moving to the right or leaning to the right, the hips will continue to the right side and the upper body would go back to the left side, which means you are trying to rebalance yourself. All right, and then the proficiency level, this is where you can balance on inverted and narrow bases, moving in and out of stationary balances with change in time, dynamic balances on and off narrow equipment. So this is pretty much when you look at an experienced gymnastics athlete. All right, so they are easily able to go on the balance beam and do cartwheels, back flips, front flips, run on it, do different types of jumps, spinning jumps. So they have pretty much mastered their balancing techniques and their body is developed well enough in order to balance on these narrow objects. Okay. Okay, is there any questions? Do everyone understand what we mean about balancing? I think yes.
So basically, the only way to, not actually only way, but to learn balancing is by balancing.
Yes, but you need to have progressive activities. Anyone can learn balancing, but what we are actually we're not trying to make them the best balancers in the world. We're not trying to make them professional gymnast, what we need to do is remember balancing influences fitness, balancing influences just physical health, the way that we move. So if we can
Yeah,
improve a
movement.
child's balance, we naturally improve their ability to move and keep the body upright. Remember, when we are seated, simple things like when we are seated in front of a desk, right? Having proper balance would actually prevent future injuries. So if we sit on a chair, but we slouch, we lean to the side, when we stand, we do the same things. So we are putting our body in unnatural positions. Okay, so if you don't have a good foundation on balancing or the way, the strength of our muscles, how they work together, then it's the same way like if you seated in an unnatural position, or you sleep in a position that you know that the body doesn't like, when you wake up in the morning, your body is going to be sore. All right, so then we create chronic pains going into the future. Okay, so that's also one reasons why we do it. But how can we increase balance? The ability to imbalance is exactly how we did it now. There needs to be, when we choose our activities, right, we need to start from a large base, and then in order to improve it, we include progressions where they need to do the same activity on narrow basis. So instead of just walking, now we need to walk on a line. Instead of just walking in a lane, we change it, we progress it by learners need to maybe do a relay race, but they need to do it while they are balancing on a 50 millimeter white line. So then that would be a progressive activity. So which means you increase the body's ability to balance. Okay, and then from there you can progress it in a maybe the next week or the next class, you can progress it to a where you're not just balancing on the floor, but you are now elevated. So now you are going to balance on a beam, which is not on the beam, is elevated from the floor. So then it becomes a bit more challenging. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Right, very important. Just think about it. Balancing is also something that plays with your mind, right? So we do have certain things, I don't know if you've heard of it, in our inner ear, that gives us coordination, all right? And that also gives us balance naturally. So our job is to improve that organ's ability to perform activities. So if you think about like when you walk, I don't know, when you were growing up, if you walk on the pavement, right? We used to play, not play, but children, what they'll naturally do is they'll try and balance on the side of the pavement, on that cement pot. Have you seen that?
Yes, sir. And I was trying to ask, and like I read the book that says that like most of a drunk person actually loses balance because
Yes,
of
because of the,
ear, like somehow the ears play also a role in balancing.
yes. What happens when you are drunk, when you're under the influence of alcohol?
Excuse me, sir.
What happens when you are under the influence of alcohol?
When you're under the influence of alcohol,
Mhm.
I think the alcohol affects the mm, mm, your balancing movements.
Yes, because the alcohol the alcohol influences you through the transport of oxygen to the brain. All right. So what we have in the inner ear is, what do you call it? You call it the vestibular system. So the vestibular system has to do with balancing, natural forms of balancing in the human body. So it's like a fluid-filled organ or canals or whatever they call it, which basically responds to the rotation of the head. Okay,
Mm,
so when we are doing progressive balancing activity, we actually also increase the ability of the vestibular system to do its operations, to the way that it functions. We increase its ability to function, which means it also helps in the way that we balance. Okay, so when you're under the influence of alcohol, because it's affects the brain, it also affects the vestibular system, because the vestibular system is directly linked to the brain. So the reason why we are disorientated when we are under the influence of alcohol is because the vestibular system is also under that same influence. So it struggles to keep the body upright. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. That was perfect.
All right. Okay. And then, like I said, with the vestibular system, like it's connected. It's connected to the way our brain works, what our brain perceives as dangerous and not dangerous. So the example that I was just giving now, I said, when you were a child, when you are walking on the pavement, we used to always try and balance on the edge of the pavement. I'm sure everyone's tried that, even now as adults. You try and balance on the edge of the pavement, but it's easy. We don't fall over. We are able to walk on that edge of that pavement for long, right? But if I go give you that same object, if I take that pavement, that edge of that pavement, and I raise it 2 meters into the air, and then I tell you, okay, walk over this pavement now, is it going to be the same? It's not going to be the same, because now mentally you think it's playing on your mind, saying, okay, it's the same object that I need to balance on. On the floor, I was able to do it very, very easily. But now in the air, I'm scared. So the aspect of fear comes in. So it's progressive in the nature whereby it's progressive on your mental state. So if you tell children you use the same base, all that you're doing is you're elevating this base, then it becomes mentally more challenging, but they will, over time, they'll be able to complete the activity, and then their vestibular system improves. So mentally they improve, and then their balance would also improve in the same way. So these professional people that you see in the Olympics that's doing gymnastics, somersaults on those balance beams and backflips, okay, it seems very difficult to do. But when they are beginners, when they are starting off at their young ages, they are actually doing those same things on the floor, all right? So coaches will get them to do those things on the floor, do their somersaults, do your cartwheels, jump, do different types of jumps, on the floor, and then they'll progress by drawing lines on the floor. So now they'll get the width of the balance beam, draw it on the floor, and then the children or the athletes will try and do the cartwheels and flips and whatnot within that parameter. So if they are able to do it without, falling beyond those lines, then you would look at a child or an athlete and say, okay, now we are at a stage where we can progress to a next level. So then you go from the control or pre-control level into the control level, and then you elevate that base. So now you'll take the balance beam off the equipment and you'll put it on the floor, all right? And then they'll just take a step up. So it's just going to be about 100 millimeters off the floor, and then they do it again. So mentally, you're also progressing them slowly. And then as they get better, you keep on elevating that beam until they are able or they are comfortable with doing their activities on the beam. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, let me just quickly, if there's any other questions, you can ask, but before I continue, just very important for balancing, to recap, you need to know how to progress. You need to be able to define what balancing is, all right? And then what are the important things about balancing? So we spoke about the base of support. So you need to know that the base of support could change depending on what you are balancing on. So if you are walking on your hands, your base of support is your hands. If you are standing on your head, base of support will be your head. If you are standing upright on the floor, your base of support is your feet. Okay, and then balancing activities can be challenging and progressive. How do you make it progressive? By decreasing the width of the base. So don't stand on 2 feet. Let's try and stand on 1 foot. Don't walk in this line. Let's try and walk on this beam. All right. Then you can further progress it by increasing the height of which you are doing your activities at. And then also the angle at which you are doing certain activities. All right. And then also, if you can write about the vestibular system, you can go read up about it. But if you, for instance, get a balancing question in exams and you tell me something about the vestibular system, which is located in the inner ear, I will give you bonus marks for that as well. All right. So anything you can think about. Remember what I said last time. I did not set up this examination. Because I did not set the examination, I am not allowed, but with IUM or some other reason, you are not allowed to see or view the exam paper. So I have absolutely no idea how the questions look, but with experience with other lecturers setting up papers, it's usually very basic, very straightforward. So the content that you would have, for instance, just as an example, if there's a balancing question, it will be very elementary. And with the knowledge that you have now with balancing, you will be able to overemphasize on that balancing question. So you should be fine. All right, so let me just quickly open another slide. All right, and then, oh yeah, no, I did mention, remember when we are balancing the body, balancing goes hand in hand with stability. And the only way you can be stable is if your muscles are well developed. That's why we have an antagonist and an agonist muscle, right? It's muscles pulling against each other, right? So an example of an agonist and antagonist muscle would be your, let's say your quads, your thigh muscle would be the one side, and then your antagonist would be your hamstrings. So these two muscles work together to keep specific movements or positions in place. All right. That's also a reason why the reason why many people get, if you run or you play soccer, you get a hamstring pull. The only reason why you get that hamstring pull is because there's a muscle imbalance. So that means your quadriceps is over the maximum ratio to which it should be related to your hamstrings. So if your quadriceps is 4 to 1, if the ratio is 4 to 1, most of the times you'll have a hamstring pull because your hamstring is not strong enough to counteract your contractions or the maximum contractions of your quadriceps. So the same thing happens when we are literally raising our arm and keeping it in the air. So one muscle, an agonist muscle is working and an antagonist muscle is working to keep that arm in the position that you have raised it in. So that's also just something to remember. When you think about balancing, you must always also think about the muscles that need to balance against each other to do movements and also to stay in positions. Right. So for the next part, actually I haven't gone through the slide. Okay. So then the next part is just on gymnastics. The chapter aims to foster an understanding of the teaching of movement concepts and skill themes in gymnastics. The self-testing nature and use of apparatuses in gymnastics makes it different from the teaching of the dance or games. Remember, in gymnastics, you get different forms of gymnastics. You have floor routines. I'm sure you've seen it, where you have that massive bouncy mat. So you've got floor routines that involves artistic gymnastics, which is, I don't know if you've seen it, where the athletes, they do somersaults and they throw balls, and sometimes they'll use hula hoops, or they'll use the string. What is the other thing that they use? Is it called pommels? I think they call it pommels, but it's like two battens that they juggle and throw into the air while they're doing somersaults, etc., etc. Then you've got other parts of gymnastics like the balance beam, the parallel bars. You've got the hanging rings. What is the other one? Then you've got the horse pommel, the one where they sprint towards that bench and they go jump on a bouncy, what you call a springboard, and they do somersaults over the pommel. All right, so there's different activities that you can do in gymnastics, and all of them require very good muscular balance, and then balancing itself, and then you must be able to do numerous locomotive activities. When we talk about locomotive activities, we talk about running, crawling, tumbling, sliding. Sliding would be any lateral movements, skipping, hopping, galloping, etc., etc. So in a floor routine, you'll see a lot of those locomotor movements. That's actually one of the topics we'll also cover in the course outline. Okay, then like we all know, educational gymnastics, when I think from the start of physical education, the most important sports that they used to implement or educate learners in physical education was always gymnastics, and it still is today. And then the other one was track and field or athletics. Okay, the only reason why it's so valuable is because you literally do all type of physical activities in gymnastics. You do running, jumping, balancing, you do sliding, you do tumbling. So, and you use all energy systems. So it was a good way to develop a learner. So we don't do gymnastics in schools to create professional superstars or athletes going to the Olympics. We do it for development purposes. Okay, so educational gymnastics is different from and has different purposes from Olympic gymnastics, which is best taught after school when you obviously have progressed. So school will even help an athlete if you want to become professional. And then it provides learning experiences that teaches children to effectively control and maneuver their bodies against the force of gravity, both on the floor and also on apparatus. It provides a foundation that introduces to gymnastic type activities and increases their skill levels. It integrates skill themes like traveling from one place, so from one point to the next, jumping and landing, balancing, and then how we do proper weight transfers and how we control weight transfers. And then movement concepts like it increases your space awareness, your effort, and then also it builds relationships, so that it also has the social aspect to it. All right, and then it's important to incorporate skill themes and movement concepts into gymnastics only after children have experienced them in isolation and or in games or dancing contexts. All right, so gymnastics is not something, what they mean by that is gymnastics is not something you want to just jump right into for a 5 or 6 year old. You first want to do other activities, you know, that has similar movements, like for instance, get them to do throwing and catching activities, getting them to play imaginary games where they hop around the class, jump around the class, where they do different dynamic balance movements like hopping on one leg, jumping from one leg and landing on the other leg, etc., before you progress to a full-on gymnastics set of educational tools. Okay, so educational gymnastics is either on the floor or on a apparatus. So floor includes movements done on the mat or the carpet or on grass, and then the apparatus includes movement done in relation to the equipment. For example, tables, benches, beams, bars, boxes, and then also playground equipment. So literally a normal playground at a school or in, I don't know, even in some of our suburbs and communities, we have these government or municipal playgrounds. Those type of activities is very beneficial for children, and to them it's playing, but it's mostly developing because they are climbing over things, they're hanging and swinging from trees or what do you call these things, monkey bars. When they play on a seesaw, for instance, it has to do with balancing and going up and down, etc. So even something as simple as a playground, you can use as your PE. If your school has a playground, you can literally do one of your classes or a number of your classes just by going to the playground and getting them to swing around and things would be sufficient. Okay, and then we teach for mastery of balancing, weight transfer, and rolling skills on the floor first before attempting them on an apparatus. I think that part we've already covered even on when we did balancing. And then progression from the floor activities, you should go from low activities or large surface areas to higher and more narrow apparatuses. That's also what we covered just now in balancing as well. So for gymnastics, it's the same progression because it all has to do with balance as well. All right, so in gymnastics, we also have a pre-control level. So here we try and get them to balance on different body parts, balance on wide bases of support, balance in different shapes, curve bodies in rounded shapes or for rolling and rocking, transfer weight safely on and off equipment. So literally just, you know, where they need to get over objects and go under objects. So literally climbing over a box would be the pre-control level of gymnastics. And then your control level is where you roll from different positions and in different directions. So basically that is a progression in itself. And then inverted balance with an emphasis on the body alignment and muscular tension, concept of stillness, and then concept of stillness, that pretty much has to do with stability. So moving into a position and then holding that position. I'm sure all of you have heard of or you've seen the freeze game, where you play music and when you press pause, all the children need to stop and stay freezed in that position. All right, that's the freeze game. So you'll tell them to dance and move around, do somersaults, cartwheels, anything on the floor. And then as soon as you push pause, doesn't matter what position they're in, they must try and keep still and stay in that position. Okay, and then you combine skills and concepts. And it will also be an introduction to sequencing of movements. For instance, when we talk about sequencing, teaching them a dance routine so that they are doing different movements following each other. So now you need to lift your hands and shake them side to side. And then after that, we're going to go into a somersault, and then we're going to go bend down and do squats up and down, where we maybe put our fingers in the air and we do a little dance. So sequencing events is getting them to do different activities that follow in sequence. And then the utilization level here is the more advanced and complex sequences of movement, combinations of balances, weight transfer actions, and traveling. And then the proficiency, level, obviously this is the experience level. is where you can maintain weight on your hands, take a partner's weight, focus on the quality of movement execution. So here you are able to, for instance, do a somersault with your legs as straight as possible and your toes pointing in the air. So while you are doing the activity, the lining of your body, your feet, your legs, your toes, the way they are pointed, you can focus on more aesthetic abilities or skills while you're doing the activity. Then execute concepts such as acceleration and deceleration, strong and light, bound and free in sequences, and then repeat sequences of several movements. Just hold on, I just want to remove my bird here. Sorry, that is my daughter's pet bird. It's making noise. Right, where was I? Mirror or matching a partner's movement. And then several students will be able to support one another's weight while doing activities. Okay, so then teaching educational gymnastics, just continue on that. Remember when we spoke about sequences, so literally what I said was require students to memorize and repeat skills in order. This can be facilitated for children by having them recorded on paper, can be recorded using notation systems. And then introduce apparatus experiences after children demonstrate mastery on the floor experiences and sequences. So remember what I said, the first step would be to teach them a routine on the floor. And then after that, once they are able to do it properly on the floor, you would put them on the apparatus to try and do it again. Like for instance, the horse pommel, right? So because of the landing that is dangerous, you're not gonna get children to, you're not gonna tell them, okay, you need to sprint, jump onto the springboard and then make front flips and then you land on a hard floor. Or even if it's a carpet floor, it doesn't matter. They're still gonna get hurt. They're not gonna be able to do it properly. So what a lot of people do in the elementary stage is once they can do it on the floor, where they jump into maybe, what do you call it, a sand pit, or not sand pit, but a pit with balls, for instance, to lessen the blow of the fall. Sometimes some people would use a cotton wool, so it's like big rounded cotton wool balls, which they literally put in a massive pit, and then the learners can actually, or the young athletes can run, and then they can jump forward, and when they fall into it, they don't get hurt. Okay, but once you see that they are able to do a somersault and land in that pit, and their feet goes into the pit first, if they continuously do it in that manner, then you can progress them and then put them behind the pommel, the horse pommel. Okay, outdoor playground equipment can be used to provide additional supplemental exploration opportunities, or when indoor facilities are not available. All right. So that is pretty much when we look at the educational level. Okay, wait, why am I confused now? Okay, this pre-control level that they talk about, this is when after you've progressed to the apparatus. So firstly, you need to explore the equipment and discover safe ways to get on and off the equipment. So traveling on it, jumping from it, hanging on it, etc., etc. So that's something you can now, if you decide, okay, we've done enough on the floor, I'm going to take my learners to the playground, because at the playground there's swings, there's monkey bars, there's slides, etc., etc. So which means they are now going to do activities, but it's elevated, right? When we are going on a monkey bar, we are hanging from something. Okay, and we are moving while we are doing it. And then obstacle courses designed from available equipment. That would usually be in your more advanced or private schools. You would find more tailor-made obstacles or courses that you can take your learners through. Okay, and then control level, here they continue to explore the apparatus. They begin to focus on different ways to move in relation to the equipment. So literally walking or traveling, balancing, jumping on it. Skills that are mastered during the flow experiences are attempted on various pieces of apparatuses. The utilization level, you try different ways to get onto, over, and off apparatuses. You experiment with weight transference and non-symmetrical and inverted balances. Okay, and then the proficiency level, concentrate on the quality of movements as they are used repeatedly in sequence, flowing movements that are smooth and fluent. So the way that they move or do a specific movement needs to look like it's controlled. That is the same way in gymnastics we have a scoring system. All right, so a lot of the scores is also determined on the way and the fluency of your movement, right? So if you do a cartwheel, for instance, you do a cartwheel on the floor, but your legs is not fully straight, it's a bit bent, your toes is not pointy, your hands is placed, is not placed, I don't know, in a straight line, for instance. Those are all ways in which they would, for instance, deduct marks or points on your performance. So the proficiency level pretty much involves making the movement seamless. So like it's almost easy to do, all right? And you're able to do it with precision. Okay, and then in the proficiency, you also focus on increasingly complex movements like balancing, traveling, supporting your weight. All right. If I need to highlight one of the events in gymnastics where it actually involves more strength, it would be the rings. I don't know if you've seen it. It's 2 rings hanging from a pole, and then you usually see mostly men do it. And the only thing they do there is balance. So their upper body strength needs to be very, very good. So the amount of movement you show while you are hanging, that is where you can get deducted points. The positions you can hold while hanging. So sometimes you'll see them doing a handstand, and you'll see some of them, their arms are shaking, all right, which means they're struggling, they're not doing it properly, or they might require a bit more balance and upper body strength in order to do it properly.
Sir,
Yes.
I think also doing calisthenics, it also involves the upper body strength.
The what?
Mostly doing calisthenics.
It involves what?
Doing calisthenics.
Involves?
Also doing upper body strength, balancing with using your upper body strength.
Yes, most definitely.
Like doing handstands, single handstands, and all those things.
Yes. No, most definitely. And you'll see a lot of people that are able to do that. Even doing a handstand, you require an immense amount of balance and strength. All right, and just neuromuscular strength. When we say neuromuscular strength, we mean our body's ability to control the muscles working on each other. Though I don't know, one way that they try and that they also try and increase that, I'm sure all of you know how to do a normal push-up, right? You've got your base of support would be obviously, or let me ask this as a question. If you are doing a push-up, what is your base or your basis of support?
Your arms and your cardio.
Your base of support. So if we
Is it not the back and the arms?
I think it's the arms.
Is the back and the arms?
Yes, your base of your
The
support.
hands.
You are almost correctly. You are almost correct. But remember, that might just in the exam, that might be a half mark rather than a full mark. So you are not wrong, but you need to be specific when you talk about the base. So you can say the arm is part of the base, but I want to hear the hands because the first contact point onto the floor is your hands. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So your base of support will be your hands because it's touching the floor. And then while you are doing a push-up, it's your hands and your feet, your toes, right? Your toes would usually be bent over, and then that would be your other base of support. So a lot of people, when they do push-ups, they also try and increase their balance. So they'll bring their hands closer together while doing a push-up, or they'll try and even increase it more by lifting one hand, putting it behind the back, and then doing push-ups with one hand. You've probably seen that. And then if you have a lot of strength and you want to become explosive, which means increase the explosiveness in your upper body, then you'll see the guys that do, or even some females, where they do push-ups, but they lift themselves off the floor, clap their hands, and then go for the second rep. All right, so that's also a good way in which you can increase your upper body, especially for activities like where you require in gymnastics, for instance, where you require a lot of upper body strength. And then it will just increase your ability to balance and then do proper handstands, etc., etc. Okay, and then some of the safety issues, teachers need to be constantly concerned with safety issues related to the equipment, task organization, management, and selection of tasks, especially due to the risk-taking and nature of gymnastics. All right. So this is very important. You can't have 10 kids playing on the pommel or 10 kids on the balance beam. That is obviously, I think that is general knowledge. You are creating a bad situation where someone can get hurt. So it's just very important to know what the safety concerns are when you are dealing with the gymnastic apparatuses, or even going to the playground, doing it in smaller groups where everyone gets a turn, where the teacher and the teacher's assistant can have their focus on each group or learner busy with a specific activity, rather than getting everyone to do it at the same time, and then your focus is not on the one child and that child gets hurt. But when it's on a floor, maybe like a matted floor, and everyone's doing this, that's fine, because there's nothing that can hurt them except for themselves. Okay, so just when it comes to apparatuses, equipment, it's important just to make sure that everyone is safe. Okay, so in one way to make it safe is focus on educational gymnastics, not Olympic style stunts. Remember what we said, in any sports, doesn't matter whether you bring football, athletics, we are not trying to create superstars, we are trying to develop their bodies. So we only do it for educational purposes. And then always match the student's level of development with the task, using inter-task variations to provide for individual differences. Okay, so we basically, what that means is, what is the word? Okay, it's not categorizing, but almost like looking at your learners' development level. How they doing? Some learners will always develop quicker, so they'll gain more balance, for instance, quicker than others. They might be naturally more active learners, so they learn quicker and they are more willing to do activities. So it's important to have your little groups whereby okay, this group is struggling with this specific task. These ones they were able to master it, so they can move on to the next progression. All right, rather than just saying, okay, everyone's done these activities now. We are moving to the progression. We are going to move to the next level. So what you are doing there is you are just creating a risk for those learners that actually did not master the previous level. Okay, and that's also how they get injured. That's how they develop a fear of that specific activity. And then they start to not like it. And that's, remember in the first lesson, we said, we always want to create good experiences. We don't want to create bad experiences. So you would rather wait for the other learners to catch up, or you'll separate them and the other learners will continue on to the next level. And then you'll spend some time, you know, trying to develop their skills a bit more. And then plan simple to complex skill progressions. That's exactly what we said now. So the experiences should be presented sequentially. Make sure students master each task before progressing on to the next. Never link performance to a grade. Do not rush the mastery of gymnastic skills. It's a slow process. Teach gymnastics in an appropriate learning environment where children accept responsibility for their own safety and behavior. Teach children to move gymnastics apparatus correctly and safely. Once children can demonstrate the ability to work safely and independently, organize gymnastic tasks in stations to make the most efficient use of the equipment and time. All right, any questions? Okay, what I also will, I think I have, no man, I said I will, okay, what I'll do is I will include or I'll upload videos. No, I actually think there is already, but anyway, I'll go make sure if it's not on LMS, I'll upload the different events in gymnastics. So I'll give a short video on the floor routine, you know, the tumbling one, and then also the artistic one, which involves a lot of dancing and throwing objects, and then the horse pommel, the balance beam, the rings. What's that one? Parallel bars. Am I missing one? Oh, the uneven bars. So those are the different events. So you've got your floor gymnastics. Then you've got, just remember, there's floor gymnastics, there's the horse pommel, there is the rings, you've got the balance beam, uneven bars, and the parallel bars. So I think that those are the 6 events that you have in gymnastics. So even when we teach it, we always try and teach it on those 6 different events. All right, and then progressions on those different events. Okay, if there's no questions, is there any questions? Yes.
There is a question in the chat.
Oh, sorry, I didn't check the chats. No, it's my chat. Why is there nothing? What does the question say? Oh, I've got it. Is ballet gymnastics? That's a good question. Ballet is very similar to artistic gymnastics because it involves similar movements. But ballet is a bit more artistic, or not as artistic, yeah, artistic, and it's a bit more aesthetic.
Effective.
Yeah, no, aesthetic. So aesthetics means it's more pleasurable to view. All right. So even though it's very similar to artistic gymnastics, ballet, and it's not considered as one sport. All right. Ballet has more defined movements. The way that you would, for instance, do a what do they call it? A pirouette. It's literally just spinning on your toes while your arms are out. There's just more movements in ballet, and because a lot of the movement is recorded on your toes, it requires a lot of foot strength rather than the ability to just tumble. If you look at artistic gymnastics, in ballet, you don't have tumbling. In ballet, you don't see them doing backflip, somersaults. All right, that's where the two are separated. So in gymnastics is a combination of tumbling and then ballet put together, if that makes sense. Okay, so ballet is not gymnastics, but there's a lot of similarities to answer your question.
Sir, which one is more intensive?
The one that's more intense is, I don't know, I would say it's gymnastics. I would say it's the floor routine because it involves tumbling. Anything where you are disorientated and moving in unnatural directions and putting the body in unnatural directions usually raises the amount of fear and risk to yourself. So gymnastics in that sense would be more intense. Ballet, it just takes a toll on your feet. I don't know if you've seen a lot of ballet or a lot of ballerinas, they usually have sore feet. All right, but they are not required to do backflips or elevate themselves off the floor. So everything is still done on the floor, which makes it a bit more safer. But the movements required for ballet to actually become a professional ballerina is more defined. So it takes a bit longer to achieve.
Sir, ballet, the people doing ballet are actually not, they don't have that masculine look, but gymnastic mostly have those masculine looks.
Yes, because gymnasts, they need to sprint, they need to run quickly in order to make a somersault double backflip or a spinning backflip or whatever the case might be. So they need a lot of explosive power. So which means naturally they'll be a bit more muscular, because the only way you can be explosive is if you have more muscles. So they tend to require a lot more muscles around their body to be able to do that. Ballerinas, not as much, but you'll find that ballerinas are extremely strong when it comes to the strength in their feet. From the ankles to the feet, they are very, because they literally move. Most of the movements they do are basically just their base of support is pretty much the toes. If we need to talk about base of support, ballerina's base of support is the toes. So the other movements that they do becomes more difficult because they now are balancing on the toes and they need to focus on other movements in the upper body. But they require a lot of balance.
So is also the calves.
Yes, and calf. Obviously, yeah, that's a good observation. As soon as you raise your feet, your heel off the ground, your calf is doing that work for you. So yes, you are correct. They have big calves, strong feet, and sore feet. All right. So then we've covered balance and gymnastics. They go together. For the next, I will send all the links. Whether you attend those lessons or not doesn't matter. But I'm doing it for recording purposes. But I will let you know when I do it. So then, if you want to attend it just to ask questions, you can do that. So then I will be doing locomotor and the vertical and horizontal axis I'll be doing together. What was the other ones? And then for the other recording, we will be just finishing on, I think it was moving objects. It's the last part of the course outline. So it should be around 2, maybe maximum 3 recordings. Okay. If there's no questions, we will end there for today.
So,
Yes, Lauren.
there are people who didn't do presentation. What can you do for them?
Yes, they must. Are you one of them?
I'm not one of them, but I know one of them.
Yeah, the thing is, I scheduled last was it Wednesday? Yeah, but Wednesday, I told him to remind me, and I most definitely forgot, and no one reminded me. And then I scheduled for Friday at 9. I was there at 9 on Friday. I was there for about, I think maybe 20 minutes, but no one showed up. No, there was one group that presented that showed up. So I don't know how many still need to present. But maybe we can do, today's Monday. In the mornings, I can't. Maybe at 2 tomorrow. So they can just
Okay.
come to where, I don't know if there's an open venue at 2, but we'll find an open venue. If there's no open venue, we'll just go to the new lecture halls, that grass, that piece of grass that's outside that lawn. Okay,
Sir.
so please, you can post on the group, tell them at 2 o'clock, I'll be on campus. All the groups,
Okay.
that will be their last opportunity. All the groups that did not present will be presenting tomorrow at 2.
All
Okay?
right.
Thank you.
Sir,
Yes.
there are actually some people that are asking like for the scope and the notes.
Yeah.
So
For the notes, like I said in the beginning of the lesson, I'll create a folder and I'll put all the notes in there, in that folder. So if you click on that folder, you know this is what I need to study for the exams. So you study everything that's in that folder. So it will be that unit 1 slides that I sent. It will be the balancing and gymnastics. It will be what was the other one? What was it? The strength and endurance, those things, aerobic, anaerobic, all of those things will be in there. And then I'm also going to re-upload Dr. Mangula's slides. Okay, remember what I said? He has slides that he used for the old course outline, but I'm the one that set up, well, we did it together. Both of us set up the new course outline for this module, the one you are currently using. So some of the work is not in his slides, and you'll see in that slides, it's very vague. It's literally just saying something and giving an example. All right, but I'm gonna upload that so you can just go through it. Seeing that he set up the exams, at least you'll also have some of his notes.
okay,
Regarding the scope, like I said, it's difficult for me to give a scope if I don't even know how the exams are going to look like. We're not allowed to. I don't know why they do that. I asked them last year also. So if I don't set up, like last year, I set up some of the modules. So for those modules, I can give you guys tips and whatnot. But for this exams, it's impossible because it's probably the reason why we can't. We're not allowed to give scopes. I don't know why, but IUM said we are not allowed to give scopes. And since from the time that they said that, they also said, okay, if a lecturer sets up an exam, they're also not allowed to share it with the other lecturer that's giving the same subject. So that's why I can't give a scope if I don't know what, then I'll be lying to you. But the only thing I can do is we can do a revision class, and I can give you on each topic on the course outline. But I've been doing that anyway in the classes where I've been giving you examples of questions that might be asked. That's the only thing I can do. All right, if there's no questions, we end here. Thank you.
Yeah, sir, we can end here. Thank you, sir. The online class was fun. We hope we could have it still.
All right, it's a pleasure. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.